Joining me live now is Soldier On Ambassador David Savage. Appreciate your time, David. Thanks so much. I understand you were Australia's first civilian casualty in Afghanistan when, as an AusAid advisor, the patrol you were with was attacked by a suicide bomber. Can you give us some insight into how that moment changed your life and whether or not you feel that you've been given the support you needed over the past decade or so since that incident?
Thanks very much for having me. About 9.5 years ago, March 2012, I was working in the Uruzgan province where the majority of Australians were located, working out of a small forward operating base as a stabilisation advisor, which involved development work, advising local government employees and that kind of thing. After returning from a meeting with the district government officials, our patrol was ambushed by a child suicide bomber who detonated the device a couple of metres away from me and critically wounded myself and three of my American security detachment. We were fortunate that none of us were killed, though, as you mentioned, some of us received life-changing injuries. I had about 60-odd ball bearings go through me, and as a result, I'm in a wheelchair. It's had a major effect on not only my life but my family's life, and the last 9.5 years. I sort of feel a bit lost because majority of it's been spent trying to recover, because it's not one of those things that happens quickly. I had a mild traumatic brain injury as well as other physical injuries plus severe PTSD. But look, early on I had some difficulties with the government coming to grips on how to deal with a civilian who was injured so badly, because I didn't come under the military's Department of Veteran Affairs. But I was very fortunate that a military charity or an ex-service organisation called Soldier On was just starting at around the same time as I was injured, and they opened their arms to not only myself but my family, and the support they gave my family was just really, really critical to helping us get through such a traumatic time. But it's taken a little while. But yes, that finally, the government's worked out how to deal with injured civilians, and hopefully nobody else will have to go through some of the trials we went to before.
It's one thing, isn't it, to care for our veterans and civilians who have suffered physical injuries in these war zones. But as you mentioned, this sentiment of feeling a bit lost, it's something we do hear over and over again when we speak with veterans. Do you think that we are now doing enough on that mental health care front?
Look, it's taken a long time for people to accept, and when I say people, I'm talking governments, both defence and Veterans Affairs, to realise just how great a problem issues such as post-traumatic stress is, and how many people that it affects, and the scale of the effect on your life and in particular family lives. And one of the saddest of course side effects is the epidemic of veteran suicides, which has just been horrific. And what's been disappointing has been the reluctance for government to own it, and it's only recently that they've agreed to have as we know, a Royal Commission into veteran suicides. But of course, it's one thing to have a Royal Commission into it, but the second part, of course, is to ensure that those findings are enacted in order to help veterans and to ensure that this epidemic of suicides is brought to a halt.
David, those of our viewers who are watching last hour would have seen in the National Memorial Service the contemplation by the War Memorial Director of the question, was it worth it? it's a question I know a lot of veterans have been asking, particularly in recent months when we look back at the war in Afghanistan and everything that's happened over the last few months. How do you now grapple with that question on a day like today when we do remember our fallen?
Look, it's something that I don't think even at the moment, 3 months after the fall of Kabul, that I'm able to give a definitive answer, because it's been, such a shock to us. And I don't profess to speak for all veterans, but I do speak to a lot of veterans, so I do have a fair idea that they're feeling very similar to myself. That you do question why, was it worth it? We know why we went there. We know that we were trying to help the people of Afghanistan, and we were improving their lives. And now to see that the Taliban is in control, and in particular, females have had their lives completely altered. The exclusion of them from not only schools but their the work that they're trained and qualified for, which is, when you remove 50% of the workforce, you're going to have a massive effect on the country and the productivity and healthcare, etc. But one of the things that I try to focus on is the fact that we enabled so many young people to become educated, so many young people to, both within Afghanistan and externally, go and study for things such as PhDs and become incredibly well educated, that they would never have been able to do so under the Taliban. And you see the continuing demonstrations by women throughout the country demanding the right to education. Under the previous Taliban regime, there's not a chance that they were able to do that. The environment was never permissive for any kind of demonstrations, let alone by women. So I try to focus on those little victories, and also the increased healthcare, the increased the reduced child mortality rate as a result of the influence and education by Western health experts. And I just hope that at some stage in the future that either the Taliban, through internal and external pressure, will be able to moderate their behaviour to enable people to get on with their lives, or eventually fall, because as we know, these sort of regimes don't last forever, but every day that they last is such a terrible one. But yeah, I think focusing on those small little victories is a way of getting through, and also to acknowledge that it wasn't us, it wasn't the soldiers' fault, it wasn't those of us on the ground's fault, or the police that were training the Afghan police. We did the very best that we could do on behalf of not only our countries, but on the international security force in Afghanistan. And that's all you can do is do as much as you can to try and make the lives better. And there's political decisions made, in the US, etc., that was beyond our control, that has caused such a current disaster there.